Hi guys, welcome to this video. So in this video, we continue by looking at database technology. So we're going to look at Unit 2. So the last time we covered Unit 1, and then today we shall do Unit 2. So under Unit 2, we're going to talk about relational data language. So under Unit 2, we're going to talk about relational data language. And in order to understand or in order to manage and manipulate the database, you need to understand a language called SQL. And this SQL is just an abbreviation for structured query language. So in order to manage and manipulate the database, you need to understand SQL. So we have different types of SQL. So what I'm trying to put across is that it seems you are interested in information related, meaning relational data language. So in the context of database, a relational data language typically refers to structured query language, which is SQL. SQL is the standard language of interacting with the database. So the standard language of interacting with relational database is refers to as SQL. I repeat again, the standard way of interacting with a relational database is what is referred to as SQL, and it is the language. It is the language for interacting with relational database. And then there are some comprehensive notes on the data or on relational data language. So let us first look by looking at the introduction of SQL. So we'll start by looking at the introduction of SQL. So we talk about the introduction, and the introduction is based on what SQL stands for. So SQL is just an abbreviation for structured query language, and it is a domain. It is a domain-specific language for managing and manipulating relational database. So in order to manage and manipulate relational database, there is need to involve SQL. So there is need to involve SQL in order to manage and manipulate a relational database. And then apart from that, SQL is used for querying, updating and managing data stored in relational database management. So in order to manage the data that's stored in relational database management system, there is need to engage the SQL. It is very much important. I repeat this point again. SQL is used for querying, updating and managing data. So in order to manage the data which is stored, so in order to manage the data which is stored in relational database management, there is need to engage structured query language. There is need to engage structured query language if you want to manage the data which is stored in relational database management system. There is need to engage the SQL. Very important. So let us proceed by, we're just looking at the introduction. So let us proceed by looking at the categories or the types. So now we have structured query language categories. So under the categories of structured query language, we have SQL commands can be broadly categorized in the following groups. So the SQL can be categorized in the following groups, and we have data query language. So we have data query language, and then we have data definition language, and then we have data manipulation language, and then we also have data control language. Now, when you talk of data query language here, data query language is used to retrieve data from the database. So in order to retrieve the data from the database, you need to engage data query language. So like I said from the beginning, SQL has got categories. So it has got different categories. So among the categories, we have data query language. So now data query language is used to retrieve data in the database. So if you want to retrieve data from the database, you need to engage data query language. The primary data query language command is select. So if you want to retrieve the data from the database, you need to prompt the command. You need to prompt the command which is select. So the moment you prompt the command select, it means that you want to retrieve data from the database. So that is the use of the data query language. So it is used to retrieve data from the database. So if you want to retrieve data from the database, you engage the SQL category, which is data query language. And then there you prompt a command which is select. That's how it operates. And then apart from that, we also have another category, which is data definition language. So we also have another category of SQL, which is data definition language. So this one, it is used to define and manage structure of database. So in order to manage the structure of database, you have to engage the data definition language. Okay, so including creating, altering, deleting tables, indexing, constraints. So if you want to work on the creating, deleting tables, indexes and constraints, you need to engage the SQL category, which is data definition language. And then here you also need to prompt data definition language, which includes create, alter, drop. So here you also need to prompt if you want to create, alter, delete, or constraint. You need to prompt a command which is create, drop, and alter. So these are the commands that you use if you want to create you want to alter or delete some tables, or if you want to work on the constraints, you prompt commands such as create, drop, and alter. Okay, so we just been talking about, so the first we talked about data query language, and then it's followed by we are from talking about data definition language. So we shall proceed by looking at data manipulation language. So remember, we are still looking at the categories of structured query language in database management. Okay, so here we proceed by looking at data manipulation language. So data manipulation language is used to manipulate and work with data in the database. So in order to work with data in the database, we use data manipulate language. So data manipulation language is used to manipulate and work with data in the database. So if you want to work with the data within the database, you involve data manipulation language. Okay, and then again, you also need to prompt a command here. You also need to prompt a command here, and the command that you need to prompt is data manipulation language, which includes insert, update, and delete. So if you want to interact with the data if you want to interact or work with the data within the database, you need to prompt data manipulation language, which includes select, update, and insert. So here it includes insert, update, and delete. Okay, so let us proceed by looking at another category of structured query language, which is data control language, So now under data control language, it is used to control access to data within the database. So it controls the access within the database. So controls access to data within the database. So if you want to access the data within the database, the data control language controls the access. This means that it's not everyone that should be able to access data within the database. It's not everyone that is allowed to access data within the database. So now here, in order to control who accesses the data within the database, that's where now the data control language comes in to control who accesses the data within the database. So now again, in order to control who accesses the data within the database, there is a command. You need to prompt the command, the command. And this command that has to be prompted in order to control a person that needs to access the data within the database, you need to prompt a command such as grant or revoke. So when you prompt a command such as revoke, meaning you control whoever accesses the data in the database, or when you prompt the command such as grant, meaning you control the person you control anyone that intends to access the data within the database. So remember, we're just talking about the categories of structured query language. Let us also proceed by looking at structured query language statements. So here we proceed by looking at SQL statements. So under SQL statements, here we're saying that SQL statements are used to communicate with database. So the SQL statements are used to communicate with the database. So in order for you to communicate with the database, there is need to use the query structured, there's need to use structured query language statements, which will help you to communicate with the database. So in short, it can be very difficult for you to communicate with the database without the use of SQL statements. This is the reason why we are saying that query structured query language statements are used to communicate with the database. These statements can be simple or complex. So these statements that enables you to communicate with the database can be something that can be complex or simple, depending on the task at hand. So depending on the task at hand, this outlines the SQL statements. So in order to communicate with the database, you need to engage the SQL statements. Okay, now let us look at some SQL statements. So we need to look at some SQL statements. So like we have said, these SQL statements can at some point be tough, meaning at some point can be simple or complex. So depending with the task at hand. So we'll start by looking at these SQL statements. So we'll look at select statement. So we're going to look at select statement. So under select statement, the select statement is used to retrieve from one to more tables. So if you want to retrieve data from one to or more tables, you use select statement. Remember, if you want to retrieve data from one or more tables within the database, you use select statement. And then there is also another point which emphasizes that it can be customized. It can be customized with process like where, group, group by, having, ordered by, or join to filter, group, sort, and combine data as needed. So these are just part of the select statement. Then apart from that, we also have we also have the other command, which is DDL, data definition language. We have data definition language there. So under data definition language, which is the command, here we focus on create tables. So here it focuses on create tables used to create new tables. So if you want to create new tables, here you engage a command line under data definition language. Here you click, you work with create tables, which is used to create new tables. And then there is also an aspect of outer tables, which is used to modify an existing table structure. And then there is also an aspect of job tables, which is used to delete a table and its data. So when you click or when you work on job tables, meaning it will actually delete the table and its data. And then we also have data manipulation language command. We also have DML. We also have DML, and DML is just the abbreviation for data manipulation language. So under data manipulation language, we have commands. So these commands can be insert into. So these commands that falls under data manipulation language may include insert into. Insert into is used to add new records into a table. So if you want to add new record into a table, you use insert into. And then apart from that, we also have an aspect of another command, which is update. So update in data manipulation language is used to modify existing data into a table. So if you want to modify you use the update. If you want to modify any data in a table, you use update, which is one of the commands which falls under data manipulation language. And then there is also an aspect of delete. So delete is also data manipulation language command, which is used to remove data from a table. So if you want to remove data from a table in a database, you use delete, which is a command that falls under data manipulation language. Then apart from that, we also have data constraints. So under data constraints, here structured query language supports constraints like primary key, foreign key, unique, not nil, check, which can enforce data integrity and relationship between tables. Then there is also an aspect of join. So SQL, which is a structured query language, allows you to combine data from multiple tables using join operation. So in order to combine multiple data from different tables, you use this command, which is join, and such as inner join, left join, right join, and full join. So all these can be used to join data from different tables. And then there is also aggregate function. There is also aggregate function. So SQL provides aggregate functions like sum, count, average, minimum, maximum to perform calculation on grouped data. So in order to perform calculations on grouped data, SQL also provides aggregates. It provides aggregates such as sum, count, average, maximum, and minimum. And then there is also subqueries. So subqueries are queries within a query. So the queries within a query is what we call the subqueries, allowing you to retrieve or manipulate data based on the result of another query. Okay, and then we also have transaction. So SQL supports the concept of transactions, which allows you to group multiple SQL statements into a simple unity of work. Transactions ensures that either all changes are applied or none of all. So that is ACID properties. And then we also have security and permission. So SQL database offers security features, include use authentication, authorization, law-based access control to protect the database. So it also offers security features like including authentication, where you're supposed to use a password, and then there is also authorization, where you need now to, the system need to either accept you to logging in, or it will say you cannot access the system. So structured query language also provides the security system, okay? And then there's also an aspect of view. So views are virtual tables that can simply complex. So these can be simplified complex query by presenting a subnet or a subset of the data from one or more tables. And then we also have the aspect of indexing. Indices can be created on tables to speed up data retrieval, especially for large tables. And then apart from that, there's also an aspect of stored procedures and functions. And then we also have SQL standards. SQL, which is structured query language, is governed by standards like SQL 92, SQL 1999, and SQL 2003, and more. Different database systems may implement these standards with variations. Okay. Then apart from that, we also have an aspect of popular relational database management system. So SQL is supported by many relational database management systems, include PostgreSQL, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, and SQLite. So SQL is supported by many relational database systems, includes the PostgreSQL, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, and SQLite. Okay. So we're saying that SQL, which is structured query language, is powerful language for working with relational database. And proficient in SQL is a valuable skill for data management and analysis in various domains, such as web development, web science, and business intelligence. So this is just part of Unit 2, which is the relational data language. Hope you have enjoyed the video, and make sure you spend time to watch this video, and then where you have a question, you can actually drop it in the comment section. And remember, Just Life University, we are there to deliver the best education, because we believe when people are educated, they are able to think, apply. They are able to think better and apply innovations into the way of doing things. Wish you all the best. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much. Guys, bye.